The last 3 years have blessed the world of the weird and scary, introducing horror movies with unique concepts instead of another reboot, remake, or 17th sequel. These movies have managed to diverge the slow downward decline of horror Hollywood over the past decade, garnering attention and, most importantly, entertaining audiences. But sadly, some of these new concepts have already been forgotten, or are on a steady decline since initial release. Even horror movies grossing in a more than sizable budget, like Weapons, whose global profit was almost septuple the original budget, has an audience score that is less than the movie actually deserved. That's because there is a secret poison killing these movies. A secret poison that's being missed because it's not truly the movie that is the problem. So for today, we are going to be dismantling a few of the movies suffering from this poison, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and make some educated guesses about the future of some unreleased horror films that just hit the market. Our first film managed to overcome and achieve success despite that poison. Weapons is a supernatural horror comedy where all the children in the class vanish overnight except for one. The movie switches perspectives from the children's teacher, a missing child's father, a police officer, an addict, and the one child that did not go missing. In the hands of another production, Weapons might have been mishandled, but the writer and director, Zach Cregger, set this film up for success with years of experience and a passionate production team. Cregger first gained notoriety in The Whitest Kids You Know, riding the momentum of that comedy into his other projects, like Miss March. But between 2009 and 2020, Zach would slowly shift his focus to horror films, ultimately releasing his first big horror movie, Barbarian, in 2022. Comedians are often masters at the horror genre, for what is the crux of comedy if not pointing fingers and laughing at the things that we fear. Although his first big film did have issues, it was a solid premise with a not-so-bad presentation, showing promise for his budding career, and that promise came to fruition with Weapons, a film Cregger himself confessed rewrote some of his earlier sins with Barbarian. In various interviews and short documentaries, Cregger discusses the major points he believes a horror film must have in order to be exceptional. One of his points is the act of grounding a film, building an environment and scene that feels realistic instead of a movie set. He wisely points out that a horror movie is inherently more terrifying when it's personal. For example, groceries laying out on the counter, only half put away, is a concept familiar to the audience, but also suspenseful in the knowledge that something did stop a person from finishing their task. A grounded atmosphere also has an impact on the actors, director, and camera work, amplifying that feeling of realism for them and for the audience. Zach Cregger's emphasis on ensuring Weapons felt realistic was a responsibility also carried upon the shoulders of the other big names behind this film. Set director Gretchen Gattuso worked on Happy Death Day and The Menu, showing a detailed attention to the background of sets. Designer Tom Hammock had proved his talent with his previous work Pearl. Art directors Cameron Beasley and Nathan Krochmal had years of certified strong experience, alongside a long list of people all striving to create that realistic feeling. These almost invisible set design choices that have a subconscious effect on the viewing audience. Zach Cregger's other major point was nailing down the gore, improving upon his perceived failure with Barbarian. A huge problem with modern films is overused CGI and underused practical effects, where the lack of practicality has a noticeable impact on actors' performances and lessens audiences' level of immersion. But Weapons has the opposite of that problem. The special effects, makeup department, and visual effects balance practicality with CGI, utilizing CGI as a secondary tool to smooth out kinks in production. One example is the bugging out eyes look in the movie, where makeup and practical effects struggle to fully capture the right emotion, so CGI was added in post-production to exaggerate the pre-existing look, creating an uncanny and disturbing appearance. The costume design on behalf of Trish Somerville, known for her work in The Hunger Games, wonderfully accentuated the unordinary amongst the ordinary, pairing bright, overwhelming costumes for the antagonist against the normal and familiar clothes of the modern man. All this specific attention to detail was captured by the incredible cinematographer behind Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, before being passed on to the editor that had worked alongside Zach Cregger on Barbarian, Joe Murphy. With an incredible team, an experienced director that chose to learn from his mistakes instead of doubling down, a medium-sized budget, a cast of actors all bringing their A game, and precise attention to details that affect the subconscious, like a few too many doors and hallways that stretch a bit longer than they should, this film should have been a slam dunk. but it almost wasn't. Weapons hit a bump in the midst of their opening month. Their growing momentum was momentarily slowed by a quiet, insidious poison, a misleading trailer. A misleading trailer has been briefly discussed on this channel before. Trailers can have many problems, but usually a misleading trailer is the true killer, and it can be broken into two categories. The first is a trailer that overhypes itself, making the movie appear grander and larger than it actually is, like The Greatest Gift to Mankind, until opening weekend reveals the movie is merely average. The second category is a trailer presenting itself as something it is not, in which the trailer presents a different genre or atmosphere for a movie. This is where Weapons stumbled. Weapons' teaser trailer is as close to perfection as one could get. A teaser should be dramatic and intense, littered with cryptic messages and visuals. In other words, a teaser trailer can be misleading for the sole purpose of redirecting audiences towards the main trailer, which can be vague but must be honest. And the first trailer for Weapons, while beautifully crafted, almost nuked this film upon release. The main trailer is almost an extension of the teaser trailer, where the first minute is a narration from the sole surviving child describing the night the others went missing. It is a good trailer. It's a great trailer for a cryptic, almost eldritch horror film where the main entity is beyond human comprehension. But therein lies the problem. Weapons is not an eldritch horror. Weapons is a horror comedy. The second trailer only affirmed that mistake. It kept that same atmosphere of a cosmic horror, adding in a secondary component, a sense of paranoia and suspicion plaguing a community that grew more and more vitriolic the longer the children are missing. Similar to the first trailer, it's great, but it's for the wrong type of movie. Before I had seen Weapons, I only saw the teaser trailer. My brain latched onto that atmosphere and projected those feelings onto the film, only for that perception to crumble with this very scene. The unnatural cadence, the soundtrack, and the visuals are really good, but the instant those scissors snapped a lock of hair, instead of attacking that character or the movie cutting to the morning and revealing an empty car to imply her disappearance, I realized this movie might be different than my biased perception. Upon making that realization, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place, further cemented by the switching of perspectives. A good portion of the movie backtracks to the dynamic between a local cop and an addict. I found that dynamic hilarious, especially considering I was watching the movie with friends, but I believe this was the moment audiences felt misled. The two main trailers, the ones I had missed, had promised a more community-based movie in a town haunted by an otherworldly horror. Theatergoers expected an eldritch horror, maybe a commentary on school shootings, but were met with a horror comedy. From that point onward, it didn't matter how good the acting was, how satisfying the conclusion was, nor the attention to detail. All that mattered to the audience was that they'd been told one thing, paid for it, and received something else entirely. For a little while, I feared that building disappointment and backlash would have a larger impact on the success of Weapons. But thankfully, misleading trailer or not, the movie is above average into levels of exceptional. Cinephiles appreciated fluid camera work, horror fans enjoyed the static tension, and many theaters simply had a good time with a movie that knew how to balance terror and laughter. But the same thing cannot be said for another movie, Longlegs. The marketing for Longlegs was strong. Cryptic messages surrounding the film from websites, photographs, and numerous teaser trailers had a chokehold on the internet for a period of time. But once the film released, the discord was less than pleased. The trailers presented a similar vibe to Weapons, an inhuman, overwhelming horror that would captivate audiences, a Lovecraftian experience worth their time and money. Longlegs is not a bad film, but sadly it lacks the comedic aspect of Weapons, and the eventual conclusion was lackluster, leading to more undesirable audience reviews despite the film not being that bad. And the reviews even mentioned the film's poison by name, the downfall of what could have been a good movie to a mediocre one. Many audience goers were expecting a completely different movie and were massively disappointed. A misleading trailer and marketing poisoned Longlegs, tainting its legacy and almost ruined Weapons. A bad trailer is currently the very thing Unmaking Disclosure Day, which suffers from a different problem with trailers, but that shall be its own video once I know it's safe that YouTube won't kill it up on sight. Weapons and Longlegs are good examples that a vague trailer is a major risk. Vague trailers can be fun, but they are also the most damning because they leave too much room for speculation, which eventually leaves audiences feeling misled. By the time a movie releases, people have made up their minds about the atmosphere, the story, and the genre. And should the movie miss the mark of their expectations, theaters will be disappointed regardless of how good the film is. The best trailers for a horror movie should not only hook the viewer, but establish the correct tone. For a movie like Weapons, the trailer should be terrifying, but there should have been 1 or 2 instances of comedy to convey the proper atmosphere. Otherwise, that trailer can be a poison for a movie, damning years' worth of passion, effort, and creativity into the void.
No. You are in my heart. Can I go into your heart?
You said you won't leave my room.
You seem lonely.
The trailer for Other Mommy recently dropped. The trailer established the basic premise of something that looks like a child's mother, and I liked the vagueness in that audiences can speculate whether or not Mommy is a split personality, an entity, a creature along the lines of a Leshy or a Skinwalker, but I do fear there is too much of a mystery. Although the trailer presents a very serious and violent tone to the film, and the movie is based upon a much darker novel, there are small nitpicks in the trailer that show this film may not be as horrifying as the source material, pulling back its punches and probably avoiding the more unsavory aspects of the novel. Without spoiling too much from the source material, I have a feeling the movie will be compared to Talk to Me, dealing with similar themes and concepts, but that people might find Talk to Me a better version. Furthermore, the violent tone to the trailer might rub audiences the wrong way, expecting an action-packed horror movie and finding a movie that, other than a few jump scares, is relatively uneventful and tame. Another recently released trailer is It Ends, depicting a group of friends seemingly trapped on what might be an endless road. There are some loud moments and visible panic, but while the trailer is attempting to convey a scary horror film, the quieter moments reveal a movie that is probably more along the lines of a psychological teen drama, which might disappoint audiences that want a serious scare, and might be the very thing that destroys this film. And then there's the trailer for The End of Oak Street, which is, not misleading by any means, but simply rough to watch. Dinosaur-centered films have been given a bad rap since Jurassic World Rebirth, and this movie is only serving to worsen that stereotype. It has been a harrowing few years for dinosaur lovers. Ultimately, a great movie is a great movie, but a good movie that shows promise in the future for a newer filmmaker and interesting concepts are slowly being eaten away by a poison of a misleading trailer. I fear that this effect might send the wrong message to Hollywood, where unique horror ideas are simplified to appease the audience when in reality the problem is the trailer, not the movie. It will be interesting to see how Other Mommy and It Ends plays out on the big screen, but until then, thank you for watching my Freaky Freaks, and remember,
I'll think of you when I'm not here, 'cause thinking of people makes them seem near. The friends who know you, love you cheerfully, I do too.